On Tech News Today, Facebook buys Oculus, the New York Times monetizes without display ads, and Microsoft goes after Xbox trolls. All that and more coming up next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, March 26th, 2014. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TNT. And by Personal Capital. With Personal Capital, you'll finally have all your financial life in one place and get a clear view of everything you own. Best of all, it's free. To sign up, go to personalcapital.com/TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day in conversation with some of the world's best journalists. Our guest co-anchor today is Stephen Shanklin, a senior writer for CNET News, who's Skyping in from Paris, France, where he lives. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
So we were having a conversation about dinner time, and you've been in Paris for quite a while, and you still have a dinner at an American hour, but probably because you have American kids to put to bed.
Yeah, I don't know how the Europeans survive. It must be a higher coffee dosage, I think, to get them actually working in the morning and eating dinner at 9.
Well, it's something you can explore at some point. Maybe you can do a kind of a total immersion program where you're eating in the middle of the night, drinking all night, and then getting up at the crack of dawn to do your American job. Well, welcome, and we're going to get right into the big news. Unless you've been playing virtual reality games for the last 24 hours, you have heard that Facebook announced yesterday that it's agreed to buy Oculus VR. The cash and stock deal totals about $2 billion. Oculus VR is a company that makes the Oculus Rift virtual reality goggles, and it began less than 2 years ago as a little Kickstarter project. Reed Albergotti is a reporter who covers Facebook for the Wall Street Journal, and hopefully he'll be joining us shortly. He's not on yet, is he?
Not yet,
Jason?
no.
Okay, great. So we'll be rolling him out if he joins us. Also, Ian Scher is a reporter who covers video gaming for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome, Ian.
And Ian's connection just went away.
Okay, well, fortunately we have a third guest. This is why we have redundancy.
That's right.
Yeah, check it out. It's an awesome concept. Parmi Olson is Forbes mobile writer and author of the book We Are Anonymous. Welcome, Parmi. 1 out of 3 isn't bad.
Yep, good to be here. Thank you.
So I'll put the big question to you first. Why did Facebook buy Oculus VR?
Well, that was kind of explained in the statements that Facebook released yesterday and the Facebook post that Mark Zuckerberg put out, which is that he sees virtual reality as being the platform of the future, and this is really has huge potential for the way that people interact and socialize with one another. And he even gave a couple of examples of ways that he foresees the technology being used. Courtside seats at a game if you can't make it in real life, going to see a doctor face-to-face remotely, but through virtual reality. So he was dropping in these kind of examples of where his vision seems to be in terms of how he sees the technology being somehow interplaying with what Facebook does. So that seems to be why he made the acquisition. And from my point of view, and from from what I've heard from other people, this is not an acquisition that's going to bear fruit anytime soon. The technology is still very much in its infancy, and we're talking potentially 2 to 3 years out before we see, we're estimating to see any real practical implementation of Oculus and Facebook somehow syncing together.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we reconnected with Ian Scher, who's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Hi, thank you.
Well, Parmi was just telling us about Mark Zuckerberg's justification for why Facebook is buying Oculus VR, and the justification essentially is that, just to deconstruct it, because there's so many nutty things about this argument. Number one, it's virtual reality is a has social potential. That's one kind of crazy idea. The other one is that it's the platform of the future. So let's just, there are multiple things in there that are just kind of screaming out at me, at least. So it's the platform of the future. He's saying that first that we had computers, PCs. Then we had mobile. And then the thing that follows after that is virtual reality. So that's an astonishing idea in itself. And then the second astonishing idea is that Facebook wants to be the next platform. They want to be the future Microsoft. Is that how you interpreted his comments?
It definitely sounds very similar to what I considered. Yeah. What's interesting is if you think about it, Facebook had struggled a little bit with mobile. If you consider their mobile app for the iPhone wasn't really the greatest until for quite a while, because they had tried making it with HTML5 instead of native code and whatnot. And they refused to make an iPad app for a while as well. And so one could argue that it took them a while to really get mobile. Once they did pretty well with it. But in a lot of ways, some of the kind of analysis that I've been reading has been around, hey, they don't want to miss the next step, right? The next big technology. And certainly, Oculus is something that's very ground floor, bleeding edge. We don't know where this is going to go. There's a lot of questions about whether or not consumers even want to put a gigantic goggles on their heads. I've been joking around, I walk around everywhere and I kind of say hello to everyone like this, just to give them an idea what it's going to look like. It's really kind of unclear where this is all going to go, but there's a lot of momentum behind it. The video game industry especially has put a lot of effort around it. Last week at the Game Developers Conference here in San Francisco, there were numerous game companies putting games out that they're, demos of kind of stuff they're working on. And Sony itself has put a lot of money on this. They've made their own competing handset, and they've been working on it since 2010. So clearly, Oculus and Facebook aren't alone thinking this is where the future is. The question is, how are we going to get there, and do consumers want it?
That's exactly right. Now, you cover video gaming, among other things, for the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And, the long-term vision is to make virtual reality a social platform and also a general, I guess, computing platform. But in order to get there, the more short-term use of Oculus technology is video gaming, as you said. Do you really see Facebook competing as a video game platform company?
Well, I think if you'd asked me in 2005 whether Facebook would be a video game company at all, I would have said you're nuts. But then they created their platform, and we saw the rise of Zynga and all these other, Candy Crush, today's King's IPO. So there's a lot of things that have come out of Facebook that a lot of us didn't expect. And the reality is that it looks like Mark Zuckerberg's really trying to make his platform as malleable as possible, and really trying to find new ways to insert Facebook into our daily lives. And so while I can't personally imagine a world where Facebook and VR exactly sync up, there are a lot of things that I think a lot of us really would have had a hard time understanding until it happened. So, I'm not going to put my bet against him just quite yet.
Here's something I'm trying to figure out. So Zuckerberg said yesterday he's really not excited about the idea about becoming a hardware company. He says it's more about the services. And I understand that. That's more where Facebook is today. It's about what you can do online. So, but how do we get from here to there? Oculus is, it's hardware, and it's a foundation for virtual reality gaming today, and virtual reality other stuff later. But how does actually buying Oculus Rift, Oculus VR, how does that get us to those services? If Facebook is not interested in doing the hardware, why did they buy a hardware company?
That's a really good question. I honestly couldn't even begin to understand. I think that there's a lot of stuff going on with Oculus that is software driven. They need to build a platform. They need to build what are called application programming interfaces, right? APIs. And they need to basically create a platform for all this stuff to work. Much like the original iPhone was created to really kick off the now smartphone revolution. So Facebook clearly just wants to be on the ground floor of that. Will they be selling hardware? It's really unclear. Obviously, for Zuckerberg in the past has said he doesn't want to sell hardware, but there's still a huge software component. Back when Oculus took $75 million in funding back in December from Andreessen Horowitz and others, I spoke with the CEO, and he was telling me, Uribe, he was telling me about how a lot of what Oculus is looking for in the future is creating a platform and creating stuff where you can essentially, in some ways he described an app store, although it's unclear, but basically a clearinghouse for where you can get all of the VR stuff, because otherwise the games that we have today can't just plug into Oculus. You can't take Call of Duty, for example, just throw it on the Oculus. In fact, I was talking to developers and they said you would get very dizzy and nauseous if you tried to play Call of Duty on there. So a lot of the games have to be completely rewritten, have to be completely reworked. That means you need investment capital to push it forward. And also you need a place for people to know where to buy them, because otherwise I'm going to go to Target and I'm going to buy Call of Duty for the Xbox. I'm like, oh, shoot, I meant for the Oculus. So there's stuff like that they need to work out. And a lot of that is not just hardware. It's infrastructure and all sorts of stuff like that.
So we've successfully connected with Reed, and so I'd like to welcome Reed Albergotti to the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, now Reed, there seems to be a kind of a backlash against this move by the people who had been supporting Oculus VR. One of them is Marcus Persson, who is the founder of Minecraft, and he said that Facebook, quote, creeps me out, and he was moving forward with bringing Minecraft to the Oculus platform, and now he says he's not going to do it. Meanwhile, there's also a lot of backlash on the Oculus Kickstarter page. There's a comments area, and of course, this started as a Kickstarter project, so all these people who have been passionate about the platform, spending their own money, being there from the beginning when the company was saying that they were going to remain independent, are pretty honked off, and they're sort of letting them have it in the comments area. What do you think about this? Is Facebook going to have a hard time developing the ecosystem and the user base that's going to be required to do the things that they say they want to do?
It actually reminds me of when I was a kid. I remember you'd listen to a new band and you'd be really into them, and then all of a sudden they'd be played on the radio station. They'd get a big record deal and they'd be everywhere, and you'd go, "Oh, that band totally sold out, man." And I think that's what you're seeing from the video game industry. Facebook is a giant company compared to these startups like Oculus. And I think being absorbed by Facebook raises a lot of concerns. I mean, people haven't really said, I think the creeped out comment is really about privacy. I mean, Facebook's business model is around gathering data on people and selling them very targeted ads. And I think, that may be a new thing for the video game industry. But it's interesting. I mean, that maybe people are worried that sort of thing will seep into the video industry, and you'll have games that are really subsidized by data gathering and advertising.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that Marcus Persson Notch mentioned is that he's afraid that Facebook has a bad track record of maintaining a stable platform. So they release some platform that people can write games on, and that works for a while. And then they pull the rug out from underneath them. They change the platform. Do you think that Facebook is actually going to be able to develop something stable? Because mostly, a lot of what they do, they control their own future. But as soon as you're building the foundation for a huge ecosystem, you can't change too fast or you break it. Do you think that they'll be able to do that?
I think that's obviously a great question. Facebook was able to create a pretty successful platform on the web, with their own system, and people were developing games on Facebook, and that seemed to be really taking off until everything went to mobile. And now that's sort of the dying, sort of left in the dust side of the business for Facebook. So I think it'll be really interesting to see if they can do that again, but with this Oculus system. If they can, it could be, the next iPhone, right? You could have a huge ecosystem of people developing really cool apps for, systems like Oculus. If not, we may look back on this and think, this was a big misstep for Facebook.
Yeah. Now, Parmi, this whole monetization question is just kind of a glaring point in all this. The Zuckerberg, as we've heard, didn't want to, he said that he doesn't want to monetize with hardware sales. In fact, he said he could monetize with communication services, commerce, and, quote, maybe advertising, unquote. And that, of course, that this is one of the comments that's freaking out some people. The idea of going to a virtual environment and being hit with ads is quite a thing. So I have a two-part question for you. One of them is that, is any of this kind of monetization going to be acceptable to the community, first of all? And second of all, do you think that there's a larger monetization scheme at play here? Is this some kind of play for the living room? Can we expect Facebook TV to be announced sometime within the next year or two? What is really going on here? Because it doesn't seem like this is a good business strategy or a well thought out business strategy at this point.
Yeah. To justify something like the $2 billion valuation, they'd have to, over the course of the next few years, be selling several million Oculus Rifts at around a price point of, $300 to $500 a piece. So That's asking quite a lot. So as you say, to monetize, there's going to have to be probably some element of advertising. And of course, right now, people are saying they're very much against the idea of that. But of course, people said that about Facebook in the very beginning. There's often been backlashes to sponsored ads in people's news feeds.
They said that
ads
about
on
the
people's
worldwide.
mobile news.
They said that
Sorry?
about the World Wide Web back in the early days. Advertising has a
Right.
long history of being rejected and then just showing up anyway.
Exactly. And the kind of prevailing wisdom here in Silicon Valley, just from what I've picked up in speaking to people, is that advertising and privacy is very much an economic consideration that consumers are making. So in other words, if they can get a service that they like for free, then they're willing to look at ads in the process and give up some amount of their personal data. They're willing to be tracked to some extent for behavioral ad targeting. So I think this is kind of what Zuckerberg is probably betting on, that as the Oculus Rift's technology gets better, it becomes more streamlined, it looks better on people's faces when they wear it, and they like using the product, then they're going to be willing, as a trade-off, to see ads in some way or form when they're actually using the technology.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about the idea of actually charging for services? I mean, I know it sounds radical, but what do you think about that possibility that, maybe this is beneficial and powerful and useful enough that somebody would actually pay to use it to consult with their doctor or something like that? If you're doing online shopping, maybe there's some, fraction of the revenue that gets shared somewhere. You could fund things that way. But what do you think about actually paying for services that would align the revenue for Facebook with what the users are actually doing? Make sure that Facebook is doing something valuable to the users. Is Facebook ever going to do that? Or are they always going to be offering free services that they monetize some other way?
Well, Stephen,
I
think I can probably take a crack at that.
Go ahead,
I
Reed,
think
and then we'll go to Parmi. Go ahead.
What Facebook did with its ecosystem on the web was it was free, but it allowed for in-app purchases, and that's a similar model that Apple took. But I think if you look at Facebook's goal here, which is, they say connecting the world, they're going to want to get this thing into the hands of as many people as they possibly can around the world. And I think that'll mean driving the price down as low as possible and making the platform as free as possible. It's tough to compete with free or cheap. And then they'll try to monetize through advertising or taking a cut of those in-app purchases.
Parmi, did you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I think I could totally see people paying for services. The problem at the moment is that payment mechanisms are still so immature on mobile, and particularly on Android. So if you look at an industry like digital stickers, which isn't really that big here in the US, but is huge in Asia, it's actually companies like messaging apps like Line and Kakao are making millions of dollars from just selling digital stickers. But people in that industry are saying that the vast majority of those of the buying of digital stickers is happening on iOS and on iPhones. So really, it's if Zuckerberg wants to see paying for services being paid for on something like the Oculus Rift, there has to be a really smooth and easy payment mechanism in place. So again, if you look at the huge acquisition that Facebook made of WhatsApp, that's a company that hates advertising and makes money through selling subscriptions. But they actually only charge in a handful of countries. In a lot of countries, they're still free, even in Holland, where lots of people use the app. And that's because payment mechanisms just aren't there yet. So I think a lot of these kinds of services are holding out over the next year or two until those kinds of mobile payment mechanisms have been set up properly.
No.
Well, let's not forget one business model that has proven itself pretty well, which is the razor and razor blades model, which is what the video game industry is basically built on. At least the older version of the video game industry, the ones that still sell desks at GameStop. One of the things about Oculus is that it's leading with these video games, and certainly one could imagine royalties working very well in their favor. I mean, that's how the Xbox has been able to become a profitable enterprise for Microsoft, although it took them a very long time. And so, they are able to sell their devices at a very low cost relative to what they cost to make, and they make their money back selling the games and then and then getting royalties from the other games that are sold for the system. So that's also another opportunity, and certainly one can see royalties for movies and whatnot as well. And again, one of the big things, Palmer Luckey's been on, the guy who founded the company has been all over Reddit this morning. And he's been saying, one of the big things here is that Facebook is going to invest in content. And that content means that, they're going to make money directly from that content. They don't have to give it away for free.
All right. Well, it's a fascinating topic. We'll continue to watch it, and there's a couple of funny things happening on the stock market today. There are companies that have the word Oculus in their name are doing very well today, just by people making bad trades. Facebook is down, so apparently Wall Street isn't thrilled with this move entirely. But I'd like to thank all of you for coming, starting with you, Reed. Thank you for chiming in. Where can people find your work?
Thanks for having me. You can look on WSJ.com on our Digits blog or WSJD, and you can follow me on Twitter at Reed Albergati.
Now, are you sitting in front of the guy who does the awesome illustrations for the Wall Street Journal?
I have the coolest desk at the Wall Street Journal offices here. We've put up, we call these head cuts, but they're the famous dot drawings that you see in the paper. So I thought it would be fun as like a backdrop this morning. So these are all some of them aren't even people. They're little. You can see some objects here, baseballs,
Christmas trees,
and whatnot, and even some animals.
Well, my single goal in life is to one day be rendered in dots by the Wall Street Journal's artists. So if you can put in a good word for me, that'd be great.
We get that request a lot. We'll work on it.
All right.
I'm sure you will.
I'll have to do something newsworthy at some point, I guess. Well, anyway, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us, Ian Scher, also from the Wall Street Journal.
My pleasure.
Where can people find you? Just tell us about your... Yeah, right. Same place.
So my Twitter account is at Ian Scher. Everything else is all the same as Reed.
Okay, wonderful, and thanks again. And Parmi Olson with Forbes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, before you go, I want to plug your book a little bit, because you wrote a book called We Are Anonymous. I saw the interview with Jon Stewart that you did, and that was great. Can you just very quickly tell us about your book, We Are Anonymous?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that was written a couple of years ago. Sure. It's about the rise and fall of Anonymous, the hacktivist collective that nobody within the collective knows each other. Lots of people got arrested. They turned informants. There was lots of betrayal, and it's just about how the hacker splinter group within Anonymous caused a huge amount of pain for various government agencies and Sony Pictures as well, and just what that means for the world of cybersecurity and for the next generation of people who are coming online.
Well, it sounds interesting, and the Jon Stewart interview was hilarious, and I thank you for coming on. Sorry, I'm not as hilarious as Jon Stewart, but I'm working on it.
You're doing fine.
All right. Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to tell you about the New York Times attempt to function in the modern world, but first I want to tell you about Squarespace. When you put a website on the internet, you will be judged. You'll be judged for your design skills. You'll be judged for your engineering prowess. You'll be judged for your webmastering skill. And the best way to be judged in a positive light is to build your website at squarespace.com. The reason is that they start you out with 25 beautiful templates. Now, you can go on the internet and find templates for website designs all over the place, and 99% of them are horrible. They're horrible from a functional point of view, and most of all, they're horrible on the eye. The 25 templates that Squarespace has are actually stunningly beautiful, really modern web design. You start with them, and then you can modify them in any way you choose, build different pages and components, plug in things, move them around. It's very flexible and easy to use, even if you have no experience building a website. If you have a question, you can contact live chat and email support, which is open 24/7, which is fantastic. They also have a customer help site for easy access to self-help articles, video workshops, things like that. Now, if you have a small business, you can sell things, because on Squarespace, all subscription plan levels are e-commerce ready. That means you can sell things, you can gather money for your nonprofit or your school registry or school fund drive, whatever. Whatever you need to do to raise money, you can do it. And also, if you have a small business and you don't have a good logo, you can create one using Squarespace's logo creator tool. You can check that out at blog.squarespace.com. Now, of course, hosting is included, and you just can't bring a Squarespace site down. You can throw all the traffic you want at, and if you have a runaway hit online, a viral campaign or whatever, your site will stay up and running, because Squarespace really knows what they're doing. Start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your website. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code TNT to get 10% off. Also, you show your support for Tech News Today, and we appreciate that. We thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today, and remember that a better web awaits, and it starts with your new Squarespace website. The New York Times is an ancient newspaper and advertiser-supported since it launched in 1851. So it's been a while since they launched. But now they're exploring new ways to monetize without ads, or at least without the regular display advertising that we're all used to. The company today unveiled NYT Now, a mobile iOS app that costs $8 per month. It launches April 2nd. The app will show native advertising, which is essentially stories written and edited not by the Times staff, but by advertisers. These will be labeled as paid posts. The Times also announced today a new Times Premier subscription that costs $45 a month, which gives access to all Times content and also extra behind-the-scenes information. And who would pay $45 a month to read the New York Times? I'll tell you who. People who are not paying for it themselves, people who are expensing it and having their bosses and their companies pay for it. What do you think about this, Stephen? Is this a good move by them? Do you think this will increase their revenue or increase their audience?
I hesitate to predict whether it'll increase their revenue. It's not, compared to their existing subscriptions, $8 a month isn't as high. On the other hand, it actually might be low enough that some people will pay it. Most people just can't be bothered. I think that the new advertising vehicle, these paid posts are, it's good to see the New York Times experimenting, because financially they just really haven't managed to knock the ball out of the park. They're just sort of bobbing along. And it's tremendous competitive pressure right now with media on the internet. So I'm glad to see them experimenting, and mobile is a very important domain. So that's good. But I have to say, even though mobile apps are very popular, there's kind of a fundamental problem, which is that they're disconnected from the web. And so much of the web is convenient, where you can just click a link, click another link, and you can explore, and you can copy and paste it into Twitter, another web link, that address that leads to a web page. I think publishing news and the web go together very well, and breaking away from the web is always a bit risky, because it sort of makes it an isolated experience. It's not something that you can integrate with the conversation. So yeah. I think it's good. I think it's good to see them experimenting, and I'm sure some people will sign up for it. But I'm not convinced that this is going to be, this huge new revenue stream for them.
They're also isolated in the sense that this is for iOS only for now, and they haven't announced other platforms like Android. They also plan to have paid posts, these sort of advertorials, as they used to be called, on the New York Times main app. So the regular app that's been out for a while is going to have these paid posts or native advertising. So that's a strong trend that has now reached even the New York Times. So we'll be looking for that to just completely take over in the ad market for content.
Well, it's an interesting debate, because if you're trying to support yourself financially by selling subscriptions, then you really have a very strong incentive to offer very high quality content to keep people thinking, this is worth paying for. And when you're going more down the advertising route, the cheaper the content is, maybe it's a cheaper subscription price, or maybe it's completely free. I think that often can kind of dilute the attitude of a media organization needing to be really ultra premium. So paid posts, I understand the rationale behind it, but I think it does look a little tawdry for the gray lady to be doing it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because of course native advertising runs the gamut from absolute garbage, just marketing shill stuff that is not genuine editorial in any way, to extremely excellent. There's some models that actually have very, very high quality work. The problem is you can't. You go to the New York Times because of their reputation for integrity, for reporting, for thoroughness, and all that kind of stuff. And then you get one of these paid posts, and you just don't know who's doing it. I mean, the right way to do native advertising is for the advertising company to hire an editorial organization to essentially run a little news organization and do it legitimately. But you will almost never, ever see the advertising company mentioned or criticized or anything like that. So it will never have the sort of quality. You can see the New York Times writing about the New York Times in often a critical manner. So this is something that exists in newspapers that will probably never exist in native advertising. So, you got to watch out, but it's probably not the end of the world. The question is how clearly they'll label it. If they label it very, very clearly and there's no question that it's not New York Times content, then I think it's perfectly fair game. It's not necessarily better or worse than a picture or a more image-oriented banner ad or something like that. So it's here to stay, I think, and we'll see how it does monetarily for the New York Times. Well, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella plans to announce tomorrow something called the Microsoft Enterprise Mobility Suite, according to an exclusive on ZDNet by Mary Jo Foley. The bundle is aimed at enterprises and it enables the central management of smartphones and tablets, including iOS, Android, and Windows Phone devices. The report is based on information from anonymous sources. Microsoft is also expected to unveil a version of Office for the iPad. Does this sound like a compelling offering? I mean, it's nice to see that Microsoft is going to be supporting being platform agnostic to a certain extent. I didn't hear the B word mentioned, BlackBerry, but at least iOS and Android. That's going to be kind of nice for enterprises.
Yeah, the way that Microsoft is kind of moving into the future is it's trying to hang on to its stronghold of IT managers, the people who work at some company and they're responsible for 100 PCs and 6 servers or 600,000 PCs and 1 million servers or whatever. These are the folks who have been using Microsoft products for years. They have Exchange servers, they have SharePoint servers. They're kind of enmeshed in the Microsoft world. And Microsoft is trying to extend from that stronghold into the mobile world. And I think this EMS, this Enterprise Mobility Suite, that's a piece of that effort where they try to capitalize on their existing strength to move into the future. How many people are going to want to actually pay for it is unclear. But I do think that, having seen IT managers for decades now, they're always really worried about what the latest new technology is going to, how is it going to be a threat? Webmail comes along. People are going to be able to email confidential documents just from their web browser. Oh, got to lock that down? I don't know. Mobile phones come along. Laptops come along. All these things pose challenges to IT managers. How do they deal with these new technologies is, always some combination of locking things down and annoying the people who work for the companies and being really free and liberal and risking data theft or hacking or various other problems. So I think Microsoft is smart to go down this route, but I have to say it does feel a little backwards looking to a certain extent. When you see Apple, they just sort of ignore the enterprise market. They say we're going to make the best consumer product we can, and lo and behold, it's good enough that enterprises buy it despite the fact that it's not, designed to be locked down and have permissions and privileges and all the kinds of things that IT managers like. So the IT world has adapted to Apple so far, and we'll see if this, this new offering from Microsoft looks like it'll be more compelling. Yep. I do think it's smart for Satya Nadella to embrace, the iPad and to move, move in that direction because, he can make a statement that he's making a clean break from the past, and I think the optics look good, as they say in the PR biz. It makes it look like he's charting a new course for the company.
Sure. Now, if you want to hear a lot more detail about this story from Mary Jo herself, tune in to Windows Weekly today at 11 a.m. Pacific here on the Twit Network. Also, tomorrow we're going to be doing Tech News Today at 9 a.m. Pacific, which is an hour earlier than normal, because at 10 o'clock we're going to be covering the Microsoft announcement live. So 9 a.m. TNT tomorrow, and then the Microsoft announcement live at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Well, in a minute, we're going to tell you about the Turkish government and what's happening with Twitter there in a follow-up. But first, I want to tell you about Personal Capital, who is our other sponsor today. Personal Capital is an awesome, free service that helps you get your financial life in order. It solves 2 barriers to growing your money. The first barrier is that it's hard to keep track of where all your stuff is, your stocks, your 401k, your bank accounts. These are scattered all over the internet on different sites with different usernames and different passwords. And second is that you have to pay somebody oftentimes to manage your finances if you want to get it together, and often you're paying too much. Personal Capital brings it all together on a single screen with intuitive graphs and charts so you can see what's happening with your money at a glance and get a real handle on what's happening with your spending, with your saving, with your retirement savings, and all your other financial aspects. You really need to plan for retirement. You can't wait. You got to do it now and get a handle on it and know what's happening with your money. So why wait? Signing up takes just a minute and it will pay big dividends. Personal Capital gives you total clarity and transparency so you can make better investment decisions. To set up your free account, go to personalcapital.com/TNT, and remember that Personal Capital is free and it's a smart way to grow your money. Just go to personalcapital.com/TNT to find out how you can get control of your financial life. Well, we told you Friday that the Turkish government blocked Twitter in that country, and this week they blocked Google Public DNS, which people were using to get around the Twitter block. But yesterday, a court ruled the block to be illegal and issued a stay of execution. The ban is expected to be lifted shortly. We also told you yesterday that HTC would offer a plain vanilla Google Play edition of its HTC One M8. The information was based on files uploaded to the Play Store, but not announced by HTC. Now, Google is already taking orders for that phone. The price is $699 unlocked, and it ships in a few weeks. Jason, which one would you choose? Will you choose the fancy interface that HTC makes, Blink Feed, or would you go with the Google Play version?
Personally, I probably would err on the side of the Play version versus the Sense version, just because I like to stick as close to kind of the vanilla version of Android as possible. And I will say that's even better with this device. That normally my fear in going the Play edition on something that has a lot of software enhancements and specialized hardware, like this has the dual cameras on the back. Normally I would say depends on what you want hardware-wise, the functionality as far as that's concerned. But there is news that HTC is going to work with Google on the Play Edition to still enable the dual cameras on the back. So that gives you a little bit of hope, right? You're not sacrificing all of the kind of benefits of this device for the Play Edition necessarily. You're going to get some of that extra functionality even if you go with the Play Edition.
That's great information, Jason. And I think that's clearly what a lot of users want. They want a plain vanilla experience, plus they want the software and apps that deal with the unusual hardware that may exist in the phones. That's the way to do an Android phone. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really glad to see them, sort of figuring that out. And they certainly need to. This phone is going to make or break the company. Their financial prospects are kind of bleak, and they need a super runaway hit. And so it sounds like they're doing everything they can to please customers, and I'm really, really glad to hear that. Well, in other news, Microsoft is finally launching its long-threatened anti-trolling reputation system for the Xbox One. When players get a lot of complaints by other players, they'll start getting reputation warnings from Microsoft. If they keep failing to play nice, their reputation will officially drop on the system from the default good to, quote, needs work, and then ultimately end up in the avoid me purgatory. The penalty for the status is reduced matchmaking, pairings, and other barriers to fast and easy gameplay. This is probably a good thing, Stephen, don't you think? I mean, there's a lot of nasty people on Xbox, and it can get pretty annoying with the trolling.
Yeah, Xbox is not the only online social environment where you get these kinds of problems. And, you always get a big stink when you try to reform it. You saw what happened with the YouTube comments. But it makes perfect sense. I think, it can be a bummer if you lose your anonymity or something like that, as can happen. But I think history has shown that when people care, they're very exquisitely attuned to how they're perceived by their peers. And so reputation actually can be a very effective motivation for whipping people into shape. And so, I think it's a smart move.
Well, Stephen, I want to thank you for having you on. We have you on this show because your reputation is very good, and so we're happy to have you on.
Thanks much.
And thanks for Skyping in from Paris. I know there's lots to do there, and I appreciate your time and like your insights. Hope we can have you on again soon.
You bet, certainly.
All right, thanks again. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today, and I encourage you to do so at twit.tv/TNT, and also let us know what's on your mind. Send us an email at tnt@twit.tv. Leave us a voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW. And don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific. And remember that Tech News Today starts tomorrow at 9 a.m., just for one day, 9 a.m. So join us at 9 a.m. tomorrow Pacific time. My name is Mike Elgin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.